with IN.
All right. I have started to record. Hello. Hey, Kristin. Welcome to Ascension Talk with Jenny. And today I have this on just before we start. Just wanted to let everyone know that if you're listening to this on the podcast app, we also have this one on YouTube now. So you just search for Ascension Talk with Jenny on YouTube. In case I get removed, you can still go to ascensiontalk.com. So, hello.
Hey, how are you
Yeah, I'm
doing?
good, thank you. We had a long pre-chat before we started because we had so much to catch up on and talk about. So I hope we get to cover that. So, Christine, can you say hello to the listeners and
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit where you are?
Hello, everyone. I am a experiencer, and I've been an experiencer for as long as I've been alive, more or less. And it's been a long journey, and it's first, it's like probably like everyone else is. You keep it as a secret, and all of a sudden it's like now is now. Now
Now's
is
the
now. You
time.
gotta get it out. You have to get it out, and I did. It was my time, and this is now.
Yeah, so
So
where, like, we both have an accent. You are originally from Denmark, right? And I'm from Sweden,
right.
and I'm in Australia at the moment, and I've been here for 20 years. How long have you been? You don't have to say where you live, but about, like, in America, how long have you been there for?
I've been in US for about 22 years too.
Wow.
And I do travel a lot back and forth, or used to do it before COVID. And so my dialect or accent is very mixed breed. And I try to slow down, but some of the listeners probably can hear that I'm not in New York or Chicago or even in California. So I'm down here in the South.
Excellent.
But
Yeah. And I wanted to talk because you just got out of the spiritual closet and you just, I would say, and you just released a book which is called A Different Light or Life.
correct.
Yeah, Light.
It's a different life, and
Yeah, life.
I feel like that compared to what the life is as a normal, right? Especially whenever in the world that we have it today, right? Is that it is a different life. It is a different life that you'll be able to see things that are if people that maybe spend most of the time on TV or sitting in front of the TV, is able to see, that all of a sudden you have someone walking in front of the TV. I gave up on the TV, but it's just that you have someone walking in and no one else can see it, and all of a sudden everything goes, zzz, and it's sap your electricity or anything else. Yes, and of course, that's why it's called A Different Life, because I felt like that the title, it fits perfectly, and it also matches what I remember my mom told me one time. She said, "You live a double life. You live this one and then another one." And I said, "Oh yes." And she knew, and it often scared her.
So in the book, which everyone can find on Amazon, so they can just find. They look at the title, a different, yeah, a
Uh,
different life, and Kristin Tranum, Tranum, and I will
yes,
have all the links on my on my blog post, which is episode 13 today, and also on the, like in the description on the show notes page as well, so you can go there and click as well. So I wanna ask you about, like, because like when we had a chat before, we talked many times, but you grew up like when you were very little, you had a lot of premonitions. Like, could you take us through that a little bit?
yeah. So mine. I grew up in Denmark, and I would say this way, that the way that Denmark is, it is very not religion oriented, but we support the church, and which also means that back then I grew up with that everyone had a Bible in the home, right? And so that was the conflict. My experience started shortly after I met my grandma and grandpa every afternoon, and like I said, mine started in the year that I actually turned 3. I'm still 2, where I see something that my grandma, she's not able to see, and it terrified her more than it did me, because whenever it was gone, I had this tremendous feeling of homesickness that I have been chasing most of my life. And I spent a couple of times, talking with my grandma about it, growing up. And all she said was that she remembered that I turned around to her and said, "This is not my home and this is not my family. I want to go home." And she couldn't stop me from crying. So in panic, she hurried up and called my grandpa, which came rushing home, because he thought that there was an emergency. And of course there was, but not like, hey, someone is cutting a hand off or so. But he was my guideline or my light, in all this, because he took it as is, right? And after that, it was like I can remember referring to my grandma, what she said. It was like our life got flipped upside down, because I start seeing and doing things that normally 2-year-old and 3-year-old, now also 3-year-old doesn't do. And that is that I kept telling them, and I wrote about this in my book, that one morning we went down to the grocery store, where we actually met this elderly man and my grandma, which is a friend of my grandparents. And I was about 3, and she basically said to me, "Hey, when they have been talking for a while, I want you to meet my granddaughter." And of course, I looked at him and I Curtis, right? Like that's what you did back then. And then I looked at my grandma and said, "He's gonna die soon." I I don't think that my grandma was ready for that kind of paranormal, and especially not when she was one of those that was down on her knee every evening and praying to God before she went to bed. So I'll say it this way: if I have to roll back time, I'm glad she didn't faint right then and there, because I knew she would have done it. She was so mad. They, I was told not to say it because it was devilish, it was bad, it was, and that was the part that I grew up in, the part that ended up getting me to be silent. And even and it doesn't stop with humans, because a few weeks later, one of her girlfriends, same thing, said the same thing. And I will tell you this, we were in the uh, it was a Saturday afternoon. They were having people over for tea and coffee, in the afternoon. And I walked over there and said, my in the living room where everyone was sitting, I pulled in my grandma's skirt and pointed at a lady and said, "She's gonna die soon." I still remember this, this voice from my grandma. It was like it's an ice pick, right? But it's what she did was that she handed the teapot to another friend of hers and turned around, pulled me out in the kitchen. Now I'll tell you this: if you've ever seen a grandma going furious, oh yes, I did that day. Oh, she didn't spank me, but oh, she got mad, really, really mad. And I learned that it was really hard to share these things with people, or especially grown up, because that they didn't understand. And it went shortly after, where this was one of the last what do you call it, a milkman that came with horses. And that was back then. I have to go in and actually do this timestamp whenever that happens. And it was still the year that I was free, and I worked out there. I've seen that horse since I was about 1 year old, right? So I went out with the apples and bread like I normally do, and I said goodbye to the horse. It was a Thursday afternoon. I said goodbye to the horse, and the milkman's lady, she said, "Are you leaving somewhere?" Well, she misunderstood everything, because I just shook my head and then I hurried up to my grandma. Well, when that happened, she went up to my grandma and said, "Hey, are they leaving? Are they moving anywhere?" Because I said goodbye to the horse. And my grandma said no. So again, I got scolded over that I have been lying to this milkman's lady but the following week, whenever she came back, she came and knocked on the door before I made it out to the horse. Over the weekend, they have slaughtered all the horses. So he came in a cart, and I already knew, but I couldn't share, and that was basically it. Um, and that was up to about 3 months before people pass away, and then up to almost the time of death, right? So I thought,
yeah, as a little child, how did you deal with that? Did you stop talking about it after a while, or did you feel like you had to be quiet, or?
well, one of the things I stopped talking about this, and it happens after I lost my great grandpa, right? Because I realized that, and especially after my great grandpa, I realized that, well, they were coming back. So I could always talk to them, right? Like, when my great grandpa died, no one knew when we visit him, right? And again, it's one of those episodes I've had with him since I was a little girl. Now I am little, but he died shortly after I turned 5. But I already knew 3 months before that he was very sick, and I threw a fit. But I also knew that and I said to him why, and I still remember that because it was really, really hard. Also, telling him, why do you have to leave? And no one else than me knew that he was supposed to leave. No one knew how sick he was. And he was like, well, I don't have to leave. I don't have to go anywhere. I'm going to stay here for a very long time. And then within 3 months, he was gone. Right. And then, of course, with the following after the funeral, I was not there, but after the funeral, I went down with for a weekend in my great grandpa's apartment with my grandma and grandpa, and to clean up the apartment because there I was just there. My mom had my sister, right, and at that point, it ended up with that in the evening when my mom and my grandma turned off the light, she said, so are you scared of sleeping on the floor? Because I got the floor and the sleeping bag. And I said, no, I'm not. Great grandpa is here. We're talking. And she went, and all I remember was that after a long period of silence, because my grandpa, he was like, shh, don't tell her, and because I only saw half of his body from the waist and up. There was no legs, because they didn't exist in the space that I was, right? So he was like, shh, and and after a long pause, my grandpa said, well, just tell him don't let it be too long or too late, because we are going to get up in the morning. And we never talked about that anymore. It's like, so about that, yes, I kept it as a silent. Once in a while, my grandma and my mom said, or also my grandma said, if we had an elderly person in the family passing, or the passing of a family member, if you wanted to go to the funeral. And I said, no, I don't need to. I already said goodbye to them. They came back, so it didn't really, say any, it didn't mean anything. A funeral is for the body, not for the person that has lived, because they're still here. They still exist. in one form or another, you know, and they can form whatever they want to, you know. The best part of the energy is that they can create whatever you know, whatever energy matter they want to, they can do that, you know. So I think that's pretty cool, you
Oh,
know.
that's awesome. So when did your ET experience start?
My ET experience, this is actually how the whole thing just
Yeah.
bounced off, right? So it ended up with that, like I said, when I was two, this is what my conscious memory is. We already have done one regression, and within the regression, we go back to where I'm about 6 months old. But since it is a regression, I believe that it is a mind juggle, which means that it can be anything. And so I keep with what my memories are instead of what is pulled out in a regression
And
because of.
sorry, for anyone that doesn't know, like I have some listeners that are quite new to this area. Can you just let them know what a regression is? Some people might not know that.
Yes, it's basically what it is that it's a form of hypnosis where you're guided, and where you're guided into some of the deeper memories that you have. Some of these can be your mind can trick you, just like you are in what can I say, in broad daylight when you are awake in an awakened state. It's like, but also that's the reason why I said whenever you go into hypnosis, your mind is telling you what you would like to hear and not what is the truth, right? And that is normally what it does, and it depending on what charge you have on the different memories and what you're looking for, and depending on who it is that actually guiding you. If it's someone that's looking for the bad stuff, I would say it this way, which is the negative charge, they will find a lot of bad stuff. And if you have someone that's looking for the good stuff, which means that they're positive charge, they will look for that, and it would be the positive charge you have on the memories. So you can have multiple insight on the same memories depending on who you're talking with.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I had my first ever regression with Misha Johnston from Starseed Awakening, and that was quite amazing. But it was like I've done a lot of work, but the hard part is that you just have to be open and just go with the flow and not try too much. And I think that's
Yes,
very vital for the process, and that's when you get more clarity. So yeah, so yes, please go on.
basically, and it happens, like I said, when I was two, and it was the year that I actually turned 3. Where I'm sitting in the living room. My mom and my dad and my grandpa is working full time, so my grandma is babysitting me. I'm sitting on the floor in the living room in the afternoon, and my grandma is out in the kitchen cooking dinner and preparing for my grandpa coming home. Well, I walk out there, and I remember this because the emotion that is connected to this is that so I walk out there, I pull in her skirt and says, "Grandma, come on, you know." Every afternoon, we normally wave after my grandpa, you know, coming in. Well, this afternoon, instead of walking to the window out to the street, I walked her over to the window out to the garden, and she picked me up. And I remember the feeling on my hands, and of course my face of the cold window. You know, we up in the north, you know, the window's always cold, even in the summertime, you know. Um, but I remember the cold on my face, and when I pressed my face against the window and my hands, right, and I said, see, right. And in that moment, I had 5 UFOs flying by, right? And I set up a hold around my grandma, and I waved, you know, goodbye, right? And I said, you know, like farewell, you know, bye bye. And when they were gone, they were over the rooftop, you know, behind the rooftops, that was where I turned to my grandma, because I felt this insane abandonment. Really, really, I felt that, hey, I'm lost. I felt I was left alone, and this family, I felt so strange, and I felt so strange in my own body too. It's like, what is this, right? And I know it's really, really hard and deep feelings for a 2 year old to have, But my memories go back, I like not this, but all the other memories is that all the way back to I'm 1 year old. So, I got one full year behind me at this time, But what I do remember is a turnaround to my grandma, tears coming down my face, and I look at her and I says, I want to go home, right? And she said, that's okay, your mom is gonna be here soon. And I basically locked my eyes, opened my big eyes, and I locked them on her and says, this is not my home. This is not my family. I want to go home. And that one was really hard for her to hear. And we talked, like I said, we talked several times, including 3 weeks before she passed away, because this is one of the memories that have stuck in her mind, that how devastated I was. And it's not just that, but the following weeks, I took off. Every time I had a chance for it, I took off. And I ended up, basically down the street, around the corner, and she ran after me, of course, whenever we would, only her and I, but in the afternoon, whenever it was my dad was home, when he would stop me when I was out walking or on my freewheelers, and he will ask, "Where are you going?" And I will always say, I'm out finding my family." I stopped with that, and I ended up getting a dog tag, with my name and address on, because they couldn't keep me in, and I had the same issue. I'm out there finding my family. So that's how the whole blew up with the medium, and seeing people before their passing, to well, everything that was going on in my life. But that was how it started. And of course, to go on after that, when, of course, with my great grandpa, but in that vicinity, up to, we got my sister when I was 4.5, right? But I started staying overnight in the weekends with my grandma and grandpa. And so we could get up in early in the morning to go in and go down and visit my great grandpa. Well, one night my grandpa woke up and had this odd feeling something was terrible wrong. Just having this something wrong, I was, I had my own bed there, but he was like, something is odd. So he's like, well, maybe it's just, but he went there. He had to go past my door, and then downstairs. And when he looked in, I was gone. So he was like, where is she? Right. So he went looking in the whole house and found me actually in a corner of one, in the living room. And he was just carried me up. He went to the bathroom and then carried me up. And of course, nothing happens for weeks. And then all of a sudden it started happening again. The next time, second thing, he woke up, had a bad feeling. And he walked in there and I was gone. I was nowhere. So he ran around in the whole entire house, because he was like, oh my gosh, mama, mama's gonna get really, really mad if I can't find her. He didn't want to wake up his, my grandma. Well, after checking the both doors and realizing I couldn't get out of the door because both of them was locked from the inside with a key, he had to wake her up, and they kept this part very silent all the way up to I was a teenager, where my grandma one day says, oh yeah, I remember. And you could just see it on her face. He's like, oh my gosh, I said too much. And I said, you said what? And she had to fess up and say, well, they looked that day, they looked everywhere in the house, And she said, I even went up back to your room and you were nowhere. I took the duvet off and underneath the covers and the mattress, and she did everything and she couldn't find me. I was literally gone. And out on the street looking, they couldn't, I was gone until that probably about 1.5 hours there running around in the middle of the night. She found me sleeping in the bed.
Do you know?
No,
Do you know where you were? Have you gone
I
back and had a look at that, like like regression?
I do have a feeling where I were, and that one comes in when I actually turned 9, because that was when I went to the City of Light, which I call the City of Light. It was and they said that they hadn't seen me for a couple of years.
Can you
So
tell us about that, the City of Light? Yeah, I think that's very magical.
yeah, well, it happens that I it has a prehistory to it, because that the same time as all this happened, I started bilocating by choice, right? Which means that everything around me slowed down, and I saw myself, how my body came tumbling towards me, but I saw myself in, split. So my physical body was, everything was in slow motion, right? And it happens up to several times, especially with my again in my grandpa's house, right? And then of course later on. But the point was that they eventually got to the point where they terrified me and said that if I keep doing it, I will die, because no one can live outside the body, right? And so after several years, because I stopped that when I was about 5, and then I picked it up again when I was at 9, because of one afternoon I actually heard my grandma mom talk about, I wonder if we got her scared enough for not doing it again, because I actually fell out of I jumped out of a 18-foot tree. Yes, my dad was standing down below and says, "Hey, we got dinner time," and I go, "Yay!" And I took a nosedive out from 6 meters.
Wow.
and I knocked myself unconscious because he couldn't catch me. So that was the reason why they started talking again about it, because they because my mom was like, no, I don't believe this is the same thing. I don't think she did this, I don't think she did this, So I thought about it, because I overheard the conversation, and I'm going, so they tricked me into believe this. And that evening I lay down and I basically projected out of my body, and it terrified me the first time, because I felt as if someone was stomping on my foot, and when I looked up, it was actually me hitting the ceiling. But what it did happen is that after that, I started projecting out and bilocating on choice again. Every evening I lay down. It was about instantly, right? And after I have done that for several months, I said there has to be more than just peeking in on people's windows, and see what they're doing and not doing, And in that moment, I felt I was not alone, that evening. I lay bed and turned off the light, and I said, tonight I want to do something different. I wanted to, because being outside and looking in, that's one thing. I said, I want some training. I want to know more, and all of a sudden I felt someone was standing in the other end of my bedroom. And I said, show yourself, because that's what normally I do, because I've been used to now for years now to having people that's about to cross over, or people that had crossed over, to come into my bedroom at night, right? So it was normal that I'm like, hey, show yourself or go away, right? Well, in that moment, I said, show yourself. Uh, they never did. And that's one of the things I thought was interesting. But instead, my entire bedroom changed from this being this dark room to this beautiful park setting, where I was standing next to a fountain in 3 layers, right? And the water. And the water in itself was ice cold. And I'm talking about really ice, glacier cold, right? Really that kind. And but the feeling of being there was really, a warm, nice, not toasty, but just nice, and really fresh air. I'm telling you, like really, what can I say, mountain air, that not city air, but really good that you can actually breathe in it. And there was it was around, and you could see this path. There was some people walking in the distance, and you had 4 paths, one to each of the corner, northwest, east, west, and then around it was grass, right? In the front of you, when I was standing, holding on to the fountains with my right hand, right? In the distance, I saw this big, what can I say? It's not a house, and it's not it was not like our inner city high, a high house, basically, it was not like that, but we say it looked more like some of the, it's just tall buildings. Let me see how I can explain it. It's but it looks like glass, right? Pure glass. It was crystal. So it was merely like, if you see some of the university buildings just out of glass instead, if you look at that like that, and then of course taller, and there was more, right? So um, that was the kind of like setting, but not like tall, to 40, 50, that kind of, but really, really, and then of course the smooth crystal. And then when I look out to the left side, right, there was another building. So I knew I had to stay there and wait. And again, I feel like I'm the 9-year-old, right, that is there. But I also feel, again, I'm split, right? So this lady, she comes walking up to me. She is in, her hair is about to here, right? Not long, just here. And she's wearing this white robe. Her face in itself is really, really white, right? Like almost like an albino, but it's not, right? It's not like, what can I say, like yellowish, like ours are, we call it brown, but when you look at it, it's more like, and it's not like white as an albino, but it's because they only have like 3 layers of skin, right? Instead of ours is 5, So she walks up to me and she smiles, and I walk with her, and she doesn't talk to me like you and I is doing, but she's communicating with me telepathically, and I just talk with her like this normal. Well, when we walk out of there, we take the path towards this small place that is out to the left. Right now, I know that I'm, opposite, but it's out to the left. And when we walk out there, people start waving, and I realize that, first when I look at them, I nod and so forth, and she nods, and when I look at them, I realize this is people I know too. And I feel that in that moment, I am not the 9-year-old, but I'm me, right? So I'm tapping into that. Okay, I am in the body of a 9-year-old, but it's the feeling of being dual, right? That this is me, that is wearing this 9-year-old's body, but, so it was an odd experience, but really, really intriguing. Well, we went through these giant, I'm telling you, giant doors. I would say they're probably about 9 meters, right, in height. This place was enormous, enormous, right? And we walked through this really big, heavy, like cast iron, heavy metal doors. And when we walk in, this is a long hallway, and all these had doors when you look down, but you couldn't talk. You but basically, if you just whispered, everyone could hear you, like it was a volume high on your stereo, right? Because that was how it was recorded, that was how it was built, right? And just the people, the way that people were walking and so forth, it was really, really, again, in white robes. Everyone was wearing these white robes. And when you looked in of each of the doors, there was basically books from, and then as high as the eye could reach and beyond. And I was like, wow, right? Because I was hungry for knowledge, and I'm going, oh, I wish I could read all those books, But it was amazing, and it was, like I said, it was on each side, and I'm like, what's going on? Where am I? And again, I felt this was familiar for me. Everything this was something I recognized. Well, we went through the long hallway, and again, people was waving, without saying anything, but just like, and greeting us. Again, I recognized these people, but I didn't have the memory from where. It was just, I knew these people, but not from this lifetime. So who were they, right? But so when we got to the end of the hallway, the doors again was very, very high and tall, and this was wooden doors, very heavy wooden doors, carvings, amazing. It was anything from plants to faces to animals to, yes, you name it. It was, the carvings was beautiful, right? It was, when we got to them, she basically put her hand on my back, and then she made a little push so I could walk through the doors. When I walked in there, it looks like I was walking into a coliseum that was, again, all the way up to the nosebleed section, right? It was really, really like a old Greek, coliseum where you can hear, and I looked up, I looked around, there was no one there, but I had a feeling that someone was sitting up right in front of me. And I tried to, like with her, reading her mind, see if there was any thoughts and the telepathic. But when I tried to do that, I was cut off right away. No, you cannot do that. And I hear this male voice, deep male voice, what do you want? And I say that very out loud. I want education. I want training. And in an instant, I see like a movie between me and them, right? A little bit higher than I am, but not by much. A movie playing out about my life, right? And then he says, we have expected you here earlier, but we understand. And the understand part was that I probably had been going there since I was, a little girl, but because that the bilocation was stopped by my mom and grandpa, because of the fair, it stopped, and now I'm able to, play it free. That was probably what they have been waiting for. I don't know, but that was basically what they saw, and they when it stopped at my 9-year-old, age of this time, the movie stopped and everything got quiet. I just stood and wait. And after a little while, it says, "Granted." And I said, "Thank you." And I walked out of, that was basically it.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, I walked out of the doors, right? I turned around and walked out of the doors. And in that moment, my alarm clock went ding.
Oh, that is such an amazing, explanation of that, yeah, experience. There's so much more I want to cover, but I just thought, the listeners can read your book as well. But we're starting to go close to an hour soon. But I just want to hear. I got another couple of things, because would love to have you back and we can talk about other things. But could you just tell us a little bit about the Council of Five, and then another thing, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah, it's like
Yes, the Council of Five, if we, scroll forward, which is the first
yeah,
chapter, because they came back, they came in 2012. And what I realized, the whole part of it, how we would, I was in Denmark at that time cleaning up there, the beach house where my mom had lived. We lost her in 2010. So I traveled from Copenhagen and over there on the west coast. This was one of those years where in February, where they talked about there was going to be a very bad storm coming in, and of course I've had my girlfriend on the phone, saying, "Hey, you shouldn't be out there," and I go, "Oh yeah, storm and me," I'm like, "Yes," when I got out there, I dropped my computer off and my phone off and so forth. Everything was completely charged, and out there in the middle of nowhere. And I knew it was going to be rough camping because we've already turned off the electricity in the house. And February month, it's cold in Denmark. Yes.
yep.
So I had the only thing that was out there was the wood burning stove, and of course, the water was turned off and so forth. So I had water with me for, extra things and so forth. But when I dropped that off, I basically went back to the kitchen window, which was to the back side, and I was like, this is nice. And I started watching just how the wind was coming in from the coastline, right, which was from the lift. And in that moment, I was like, this is weird. Because all of a sudden it looks like a funnel, right? Or jet stream coming in. And it literally looked like one of those, if you're been sitting in the plane right over the engine, right? That thing that goes in, right? So it looked like that. And I'm going, this is weird. So I move over because at the window it's not big, and there is a shed that is in my skew, right? Between me and the house is across, So I step all the way over to the right of the window and lean over because I want to see if it do come from the beach, right? If it's just between the dunes. It doesn't. It actually comes from above and then make a 90-degree turn. Well, if it is a funnel, well, we already know that funnels really don't exist up there north, and it's a water sprout, and a water sprout is more like down and up, right? Doesn't stay stationary. This one stays stationary for more than 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, cool. So it moves a little bit, so I don't have to stand there leaned over the sink, right? With the faucet right here in my chest, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm standing there looking at it because I think it's amazing. Come straight down, make a 90-degree turn, and you can see it looks like a jet stream and not like I said, a water sprout or anything else, right? And all of a sudden it opens. And in that moment it opens, you can see entities walking out and disappearing. And you can see how there are entities, right? Literally humanoid entities, and they keep coming and coming and coming, right? And I'm like, oh, cool. And I hear myself, I'm just standing there and really being mesmerized with what's happening. I said, oh, cool, I got to record this. Nothing happens. You need to record this. Nothing happens. You need to go and get your phone. You can record this. Nothing happens. And I realized I don't have control over my body. At least that's what I feel I don't have. So I'm saying, you need to move your feet. Nothing happens. You need to move your feet. Nothing happens. I have no control. In the end, I am using big bad words to get my body to move. And I realized later on what actually happens, but it's a distortion in space-time reality, that you actually slow down so far down that you are inside and following that speed of time that they are using. But if you are moving it up to your speed, so what you hear is your heart is not no, it's ka-dum, 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 right? Really, really slowing and big booms instead of your normal, right? So which means that the time is really slowed down enough to do this. Well, finally, I get to move the legs, and I feel like it's too still, there's walking, right? Because again, you're pushing, you feel like you have to push your body, and I scream in my body, and it gets out of this whatever is going on, and I run in, I get my phone, run out again, because my phone is with the face upside down. It's like a peanut butter jelly sandwich. You know perfectly well they were always laying on the face, right? So you leave your phone with the face down, because then if it does, it wouldn't land on the face down, right? That's normal. So I pick it up, I run out to the kitchen, and my phone is off. And I'm going, what's going on? Because my phone is 100% charged. Well, what I do is that I try to turn it on, right? Nothing happens. I take it apart, put the battery in again, nothing happens, right? I'm going, oh, that's fine. If it has to be that way, I'm going to go ahead and get my computer. Well, when that happens, bring the computer in. Basically, I turn on the computer while I'm storming out again and just keep watching this show, right? I'm like, hey, it's going to take about 5 minutes for this computer to turn on, so I'm just going to leave it out in the living room while it's charging, turning on, because they can't charge, it's already charged. So I walk out, I walk after about 5 minutes or so, I walk into the computer and it's off. I go, excuse me? What's going on? So I take the computer, right out again in the kitchen, I try again, nothing happens. And then I take the battery out just in case, in again, nothing happens. And I'm going, okay, there must be some charge between the phone and computer. So I run in again to into the living room. And I'm going, okay, I'm going to go ahead and set those two together, because now I've been watching this for a long time, right? I sit down, I plug them in together, and I can feel someone standing behind me. And the first thing I'm saying, shoot, right? And I'm saying it out loud. I forgot to check the rest of the house for break-ins, right? That was basically my whole thing. And then I extend my parameters, because I'm feeling like my second is that there's more than one. I can't overman these guys, and one I can manage, I think, that's just in my mind, hey, I can manage one, but not two or four, right? So I extend my parameters, and outside the house, I feel there is this giant, and I'm telling you, giant. He's, when you look at them, they are above the you know, where the edge of the house start, right? So that's how far up they are, you know, and that's basically their heads is above that. And they're standing like this on each corner. And I'm going, who in earthly God is this? Just in another bad language, you know. Yeah, I know you have some reader, you know, listener that, you know. And then I hear this voice. Can you see us? And of course, I crack a joke and I said, no, I cannot see you, right? I get up, I turn around, and here I got our 5 entities, right? I can see 2 of them, and then 2 of them is solid and 2 of them elusive. And as I turn around, I walk on to the other side of the couch. I said, I was sitting with my back to you. Now I can see you. And he said, oh, you can. Thank you. And that's basically, and then he said, you were not supposed to be here this weekend. I said, I was not. And then the guy from the back, the middle, you know, there was 3 in the back, the one in the middle, he stepped forward. And I remember him from my childhood, you know. And I said, oh, it's you know. And he said, yes. I said, welcome. It's a long time ago. And of course, the guy in the front, he said, do you guys know each other? And I said, yeah, we do. And I can feel it immediately. He's trying to read my mind to find it out. And I shut him off right away, you know. And he get really, really surprised. You know, at this time, we already shared, you know, he already said who he was and so forth. And then basically he turned around and he said, okay, these are guys, this is ours, you know, and who they are. And he gets surprised about that, right? So what he also does is that he turns around to the one in the back, because we're staring at each other, and they start talking. Well, they are telepathically talking, and I'm able to read everything that they're talking about, because their language is hanging as strings of energy in the air. And he's telling who, you know, he's telling the one in the back, he's telling who I am, and I'm supposed to be there. So because I'm supposed to meet them. And of course, the one in the front, he tells me that they are a delegation of the Council of Five.
So did they tell you why they came there?
Yes, they do. I have not added that. It's going to be in my next book.
Oh, okay. Do you want to share that, or want to?
I'll share a little bit, because that day they were down because they're saying that was in 2012, because they had our Sam, which is the one that was stepping in the front, right? He's a doctor. Not as a physical medical doctor as we here, but one of the things he is taking care of is the part of all the species are split out in parts, right? So we go under one part, what the humans are going under one part, and then you got like I said, with other parts goes under. And then you have the organic matter. Well, he goes under with the humans, right? The humanoids. But what he does is that he does not cater to all the humans. He only caters to those that needs to be woken up, which means that those are what I call have a co-host, right? And also meaning that those that is sharing a body, they are there to help, right? And also meaning that whenever you are done with your body, they are there to help you getting out of the body. He or they are here. They're here all the time, and they have been here for several 100,000 years. When the first part, the original that was living here left, and they came in, and that was where they started as the council. They started out as the Council of 9, now the Council of 5. one of the races that was on board has left, um, because that they did not agree with that the humans are a race or species that needs to be catered and taken care of. They are considering the humans just another um, animal, say it this way, because they don't want to integrate and advance as fast as they want them to. Um, and so, but they're here to take care of the whole planet and the whole area, not just the solar system, but several solar systems. But we don't see them in the daily because that they have decided that for a long time ago. We see them as shadows on the wall, say it this way, because they live within another frequency than we do, but they are able to go from that frequency and then into this frequency just like we do whenever we are in dream state or we are in a different frequency, you know. They're doing the same thing, you know. But yeah, that day they told me how many was coming down, and I was not surprised. The total conversation we had that day was last about 45 minutes, and that's going to be in my next book. And then, of course, I hope that it's going to be in a frequency of fray. In the last book, I will have the one-on-one that I have with Sam, the last conversation I had with him, and I haven't had any conversation else since with him since 2012.
Probably
But that
happens soon. Probably
I
happens after this. I get goosebumps.
I
I,
I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I also know that why I was supposed to be there, and also because that I knew the others, you know, but I did not know Sam. And when we go in and look at some of the paperwork that's out there and so forth, there's one difference that is different is that Sam, he looks like a Norse or Nordic, right?
is it
But
hot? Just kidding.
yes, he is. He is the body he has decided to utilize is very um, muscular, say it this way, and of course uh, on Sunday when we talked right after the weekend. That was actually one of the things that he was laughing at that I mentioned that he had decided what kind of body he had. He told me that this group here was in Asia, right? And but I also know they're more than just in Asia; they're everywhere, right? So they have different places, uh, and but they don't want to. I don't believe that they care to share, but there's a lot they are doing that is behind the scene. Running a place like this, like when I asked why are you not letting the humans just run in, he said, "Well, you don't let children play with knives either, do you?" And I said, "That's true, right?" And it is, you know. I asked him again, one of the question I asked him if this is what they call a prison planet, right? And or can we, the humans freely come and go as they please? And he said, yes, of course they can. They're not prisoners on this planet. They are just not able to leave because they are not, what you call it, expanding fast enough, and it is their own greed that does the prisoner of them. Second is that the human body, cannot handle being out of space or out in space for a longer period of time, which also means that back then he mentioned, we talked about being in another atmosphere or on another planet in the solar system, and he said no, that's not going to happen. because there are no feasible planet that is usable to sustain human life at all, and it will break down, which means that also cancers and so forth. So yes, correct. They have to get out of this system to be able to find a planet, and they're not there because they fight over money instead
Yeah.
of fight over
Yeah.
knowledge.
For sure, there's a lot of things going on. So before we wrap it up, first of all, I got two things. All right. So once again, where can people find your book? What is it called again?
The book is called, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, I have
It's
to
called,
put it up a little bit. And for you that listening to the podcast show, I just want you to verbalize it, please.
it's called A Different
Yeah.
Life, and it is written, of course, by Kristin Tranum. And for those that actually are on video, you'll be able to see it right now, or YouTube, right? And it has a distinguished cover, say it this way.
Yeah. So it's on Amazon. That's where they can find it at the moment.
It is on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yes,
If it's
on
any
Amazon.
more, I can just add it to the show notes page. So to wrap it up, could you, because this show is called Ascension Talk, so I want to, like, a very important thing for me is self-care and to protect yourself and ground yourself in order to work towards the ascension, like, and to upgrade yourself. So what do you do? What do you do to ground yourself and protect yourself and become a better person, so to speak? So what do you do? If you could
Well,
share.
I always feel like that I'm never walking alone. But one of the things that I do, it sounds maybe even more, what can I say, odd. And I taught several people is that for you to ground yourself, you have to get out and look at yourself. And the way that you can do that is you have to get out of your body. You have to bilocate. You got to project yourself, project yourself out and see how you can ground yourself. Because if you're out and you feel like that you are protecting this and bubbling, what can I say, creating a safe bubble around your body, you will also be able to do that whenever you are outside because you're always there. You're always as your own protector, right? But if you stay within the body and feel like this is the only thing that you are, because you are not the body, you are just, the body is just another piece of clothes that you can take off whenever you want to and put something else on, right? So, but that's lifetimes, right? But you basically says, okay, this is what I need to do. What do I need to do in this, now and here is that this is how you do it. So
Thank you so much, and people will go over and get her book because it's great, and and you can find all the details on the show notes page on my show Ascension Talk with Jenny, or YouTube Ascension Talk with Jenny there as well, or ascensiontalk.com, and this is episode number 13. Thank you so much, and I really want to catch up with you soon as well, and maybe we can have chat about anything really.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you for your time.
thank you for having me.